Welcome to this math video provided to you by the DC Public Library's Adult Literacy Resource Center. Today, we'll be introducing percents and showing you how to solve for a percent of a number using blocks and proportions. This is just our first video because there's a lot to know about percents, but one of the biggest things to know is that percent really means per hundred. If we break it up like this, see, cent actually means 100. You've probably heard it before in other words and just didn't realize it. For example, when we measure things, a centimeter is 1/100th of a meter. When we say century, we mean 100 years. A more common example is a penny, which is also called a cent. We need 100 pennies, or 100 cents, to make up a dollar. So, percent means per hundred, or out of 100. We're also going to be doing a visual demonstration of what this actually looks like using blocks. And to do this, I'm going to use some base 10 blocks from coolmath.com. The link to the blocks I used is in the description below. There are also other websites that have their own versions of base 10 blocks. You can look these up by searching for base 10 blocks in your search engine. In this video, I'm using ones that you can play with online, but you can also have physical blocks that you hold in your hand. You can buy these at a lot of education supply stores, but we also have them at the DC Public Library in the Adult Literacy Resource Center. So come on in and ask for one of our staff to show you how to use them. This right here is called a 100 square. Can you guess why it's called that? It's a big square made out of 100 little squares. We're going to use this to demonstrate percents. When we say per hundred, this is our hundred. So let's say a dress is $30 and it's 10% off. So this is how we would show 10%, 10 per hundred, using our blocks. We take 10 blocks, I'm going to change the color here so it stands out, and line them up alongside the 100 block, like so. Now we also know that the dress is $30, so I'm going to put 30 along the other side here. I'm going to get 3 sets of 10 blocks. I'm going to change the color again and rotate it so it lines up nicely. We can just copy that so we have 3 sets of 10, which makes 30, and drag them right here. Here's 30, there's 10. Again, we're using the 100 block to set it up, to frame it, because we're working with per cents, which means per hundred. So what we don't know is how much money 10% of 30 makes, and we can use the empty space here to figure that out. As we look at it, I figure I can use these 1 blocks to fill that in. I'm going to change the color again here. How many of these do you think we'll need? Let's copy and count, see how many we'll need, and you can see we just need 3 blocks to fill in the blank space and make a complete rectangle with our blocks. What does this mean? It means that if we have a dress that's $30, 10% of that is $3. I bet you're wondering, well, how do we do this with numbers? First, let's take a look at how we show 10% using numbers. This is one way of showing 10% in math, just with 10 with a percent sign, 10%. Here's another way of showing 10%, 10 over 100, or 10 out of 100. You can see here, we are translating the words 10%, or 10 per cent per hundred, into math language, numbers and symbols, but using a different symbol than the percent sign. This 10 obviously means 10, the line here means per, and the 100 on the bottom refers to cent. Writing it this way is also called a fraction, which is a type of ratio, a comparison of 2 numbers. The top, the 10, is what we call a part, because it's part of the total 100. The 100 on the bottom here is what we call a base or a whole. It's the total amount, the whole. Both of these ways of writing it mean 10%. Again, because percent means out of 100. So I'm going to erase this one and keep the fraction way of writing it. Let's go back to our dress. Remember, the dress is 10% off, and we need to figure out what that means in money. We already have 10% written here, 10 over 100, so we're going to leave that as is. We also know the dress is $30, which is the total or whole price of the dress. So if I'm setting up another fraction over here and want it to be equivalent to my 10%, should I put the 30 on the top or the bottom? Well, because 30 is the whole price, I'm going to put it on the bottom, just like the 100, our other whole. And I'm going to put an equal sign between these two fractions because we're setting them up as equivalent, which means they're written differently, but they represent the same amount. Now we have an empty space here on top of the 30, just like we had the empty space in our rectangle. And just like with the rectangle, we have to fill it in. But how do we do that? I'm just going to put an X here for the time being as a placeholder, but we're going to figure out what number actually belongs there. We have to do something called cross multiply, which means we multiply diagonally across the equal sign. So here we have 100 times that X I put in there earlier. So I'm just going to write that down as we have 100 X's, like so. And over on this side, we have 10 times 30. What does that become? That equals 300, right? And I'm going to bring down the equal sign because these are still equivalent. But now I want to know what that X becomes, what it represents. And I can't do that with that pesky 100 sticking around. I need to get rid of it. Since I was multiplying the 100 times the X, I'm going to do the opposite to get rid of it. I'll divide 100 by itself. What do I get? 1. So now I have 1x, which I can just write as x. But since these are equivalent, if I do something to one side, I have to do it to the other. So I'm going to divide 300 by 100. What do I get? I get 3. So it looks like here, x is equal to 3. Does that sound familiar? Yes, that's the same answer we got earlier, using just the blocks. Let's go back through what we did with the numbers one more time. Remember, we set up our 10% as 10 out of 100. Then we know that 30 is the total, the whole price of the dress, so we put it on the bottom where the holes go. We put an X in the blank space just to have something represent our missing answer. To find out what the missing number, or what 10% of 30, is, we cross-multiplied and set them equal to each other, and then we had to divide both sides by the number that was with the X, in this case, 100. And that gave us our answer. 10% of $30 is $3. Now, we just did that in our heads, but if you're practicing percents in order to take a test, you may be able to use a calculator on that test. For example, on the CASAS test, and for many questions on the GED test, you can actually use a calculator to help you solve. So let's go through how to punch this in on a simple online calculator. First, we cross-multiplied. Here we have 10 times 30, and we get 300. And then we divided that by 100. And our answer, again, is 3. So we know that our dress's original cost is $30. 10% of that is $3. So, what are we going to end up paying for this dress if it's 10% off? You're right if you're thinking, we have to subtract. we have to take away $3 from 30. And when we do that, like so, we get $27 as the cost of our dress. Let's try this with a few other examples. We need to get some fancy shoes to go with our dress. These shoes, unfortunately, are $60, but good news is they are 30% off. Let's try this with the numbers first, and then we can check ourselves with the blocks. So remember how we set up 30% as a fraction? We can also call it 30 out of 100 or 30 over 100, remember? And let's go ahead and label which is the part and which is the whole, so we're ready for our next step. So what's the whole cost of the shoes? It's 60, and since it's the whole cost, we'll put it on the bottom over here. I'm going to fill in the top with an X since we don't know the answer yet, and put in my equal sign, and now we're ready. Let's cross multiply here, 100 times our X, and then here we have 30 times 60. I know 3 times 6 is 18, and then I have 2 extra zeros. So I'm going to pop them on the end here and say 30 times 60 is 1,800, or 1,800. Bringing down the line, and now, again, we have to get that X by itself. So since this was multiplied, we do the opposite and divide. That leaves us X by itself over here, and over here we divide 1,800 by 100. Dividing by 100 is nice because I can just cross out these zeros here. 2 zeros on the bottom means I cross out 2 zeros on the top. It's going to be 18. So 30% of $60 is $18. Now, let's go back over to our blocks and make sure we're right. We have our 100 block, and I got us set up already. I'm just going to drag in our 60 for $60 and our 30 for 30%. And now we have to fill this empty space in again. It looks like I can do that with 3 rows of 6. Let's see. Yep. And 3 rows of 6 gives us 18. So we were right. Now, to figure out what we'll end up paying, we're going to have to subtract again. 60 minus 18. We can do this by hand or on a calculator. That's going to end up costing us $42. Our outfit isn't done yet. Let's get a hat. This hat is $40 and is 20% off. So we want to figure out what 20% of $40 is. If you want, you can pause the video now and try to work it out on your own, and then hit play again when you're ready to go over it together. I'll put the steps up here so you can follow along while we're paused. Ready? Pause. All right, ready to work it out together? So first, we write our 20% as 20 out of 100, like so. Then we put our 40 on the bottom on the other side, in the wholes place, right across from the 100. We fill in with an equal sign and an X. Are you with me so far? All right, now we cross multiply. We get 100 times X over here, and 20 times 40 gives us 800 over here. And we set them equal to each other because everything here is equivalent. Now, to get the X all alone, we divide by 100, which gives us X is equal to 8. So 20% of $40 is $8. How much are we paying for the hat? Let's see. 40 minus 8 is 32. So we are paying $32 for the hat. Great job! All right, to complete our look, I think we need a necklace. This necklace is pretty expensive, $90, but it's also 60% off. I'll put the rules up here again. Go ahead and pause the video and work it out on your own. Ready? Pause. All right, we're back. Let's see if we got the same answer. Now I'm going to write out the problem on the screen here, and I'll talk through it as I do. But I want you to try something else. I want you to try turning the volume off by clicking on this symbol next to the play symbol below. And I'd like you to narrate what I'm doing as I write it, like you're teaching someone else how to do it. Then, when you see the smiley face on the screen, click the volume symbol again to turn your volume back on. Yep, I know, it sounds kind of silly, but one of the best ways to learn is to teach someone else, and I want you feeling confident in your ability to do percents. Now, if you don't feel up to working through it and narrating it on your own quite yet, you can leave the volume on and narrate along with me as I talk. All right, if you're going to turn the volume off, go ahead and do it now. So, we have our $90 necklace that's 60% off. So I'm going to write 60% as 60 out of 100, and then over here I'll put the total price of the necklace, $90, on the bottom where the holes go. I'm filling in the missing number up here with an X and setting them equal to each other. All right, now we're going to cross multiply. We have 100 times X over here, and the 60 times 90 over here. That'll be 3,600. So we set that equal to each other and divide both sides by 100. 3,600 divided by 100 gives us 36. So 60% of $90 is $36. Smiley face time. Great job! Next, we'll figure out what we end up paying for the necklace, which is 90 minus 36. This gives us $54. So that's it for this introductory video on finding percents. We used proportions to do it and checked our work using the base 10 blocks. If you're stuck, remember, you can always come on in for tutoring or look on our website for more resources by clicking this link here. See you next time!